I appreciate you resolving everything after 3 months of insomnia. Tom grinned and added, I'll wire you 5 cents for the repairs. I cocked my head in complete bewilderment. What? Nothing has been fixed by me. You couldn't have done nothing for 3 months. I'll inform the supervisor that everything has been resolved. Tom left after saying that. Tom was wrong in everything he stated, but I didn't feel like correcting him. With a little sigh, I made my way to the president's office. I was at work the following day, but Tom had been phoning me nonstop since the morning. I advised my staff to say I wasn't available because I had no need to speak with him, but they were getting tired of getting calls every 10 minutes. Eventually, at about 3:00 p.m., the calls ceased. All of a sudden, the ringing stopped. Richard whispered to himself, I have a bad feeling about this. Although I was glad the calls had stopped, I didn't really listen to what Richard had to say. His suspicion will shortly be confirmed. I'm an engineer named Joseph Miller, and I'm 46 years old. Oil drilling rigs are the primary product of our company. These devices, as its name implies, are constructed with enormous expenditures and are used to drill for subterranean oil resources. Our company produces both land-based and offshore varieties. Offshore rigs are far more difficult to manage and are on a different level than land-based rigs, which are comparatively simple to set up and run. The industry is aware that a well-known global corporation invested $400 million to construct a deep-sea oil drilling rig. Our company only produces one kind of offshore oil drilling rig, but it will go bankrupt if it fails due to the hefty development costs. Our president, Charles Moore, is the one who insisted on taking this risk in order to construct this rig. One of the most well-known engineers in this field is President Moore. He is well known all around the world and has received several honors. I'm one of the many engineers who aspire to work for President Moore. At the age of 35, I started working for this company as a mid-career recruit. As a recent graduate, I actually failed the admission exam when I first attempted to join this company, so I joined my second option. However, when I was employed there, my ambition to work for President Moore's organization only intensified. I was 35 when I got the opportunity to meet President Moore at a conference and share my enthusiasm. Then why don't you come work for our company? He asked. I was completely taken aback. I almost passed out from lack of oxygen because I was so delighted that I forgot to breathe. It may sound dramatic, but to me, it was like my first love returning to me after all these years, something I never imagined would happen. I then began working for President Moore's business, where I have been putting in a lot of overtime ever since. The showpiece product of our company is the offshore oil drilling rig that was finished a few years ago. It serves as a kind of business card for our organization. When you think of us, this rig comes to mind. Large equipment need more than just installation. It also needs to be inspected a few times a year and repaired when it breaks down. This maintenance and inspection is my responsibility. I also travel overseas a lot since we have customers there that use our products. In spite of this, I take great satisfaction in my fulfilling career. There's a call from Tom Joseph, said Richard, my junior. Tom, Richard is well known for fervently expressing his excitement for our organization in his last interview, which led to President Moore immediately offering him a position. We've got another passionate one like you, Joseph, President Moore remarked with a giggle. Richard lived up to that when he joined, fervently stating that he had always wanted to work here. Richard is more charming to me than the other juniors because I entered this company with the same enthusiasm. A tired voice could be heard on the other end of the call as I took Richard's place. Hey, the rig is misbehaving once more. Would you be able to visit us now? Tom Anderson, who works for a construction company, was the caller. Our drilling rigs are also used by Tom's company. I understand. Could you explain the issue to me? What? Come and take a look for yourself. How could I tell? I'm not an authority. I could tell Tom was letting out a frustrated sigh even though I couldn't see his face. Our readiness varies according to whether it's a malfunction or an operator error. Have you attempted to restart it? Switch it off, then back on. Stop talking and get here in half an hour. You understand. Tom let out a roar and smashed the phone. With a groan, I set the receiver down. Is it acting up again? Richard, who had been observing me, frowned as he asked. It seems so, I said in response. Richard remarked irritably. Tom called a few times last month too, saying the rig was acting up. I gave a nod. Richard was correct. Last month, I made 3 trips to Tom's business. It was always about something broken or not functioning. There might be a flaw in our equipment if it malfunctions this frequently. However, no other business calls us in this manner. Only Tom calls about defective operations, but we do routine checks and occasionally spot wear and tear that consumers might overlook. Additionally, it is consistently truly broken, which is quite annoying. It took a week to fix it last time, right? Richard inquired. I gave his comments a weary nod. Even though our equipment is precise machinery, this kind of frequent breakdown is uncommon. We looked closely to see if the rig itself needed to be replaced, but we couldn't find any problems. Thus, it just indicates that Tom's business is employing it carelessly. Do they even understand how expensive that rig is? Richard inquired. They're clearly not utilizing it right, but I don't think they don't comprehend. The other day, I happened to catch Tom using it, and his process was everywhere. It made me anxious. At what I said, Richard gave me a nasty look. Tom was using his laptop in a manner akin to that of a 1-year-old. My heart stopped when I watched him carelessly manipulate its delicate pieces. For the time being, I'll go over there. He instructed me to arrive in half an hour. No way. It takes at least an hour to get there no matter how fast you go. Richard moaned incredulously. Tom, who is 49 years old and older than I am, was reportedly hired in the middle of his career last year. No one can protest because he appears to be the president's cousin and gained access through contacts. In any case, I have to go fix the rig if it's behaving up. I hurriedly got ready and went to Tom's place. It was more chaotic than I had anticipated when I got there. As soon as he spotted me, James Williams, the chief of the drilling rig department, rushed to me, nearly crying. I apologize for bothering you once more, Joseph. Tom informed us this morning that it wasn't functioning once more, even though we were meant to begin drilling today. This is one of the few oil drilling companies in America. Oil drilling typically evokes pictures of operations conducted abroad. In Japan, nevertheless, it's not totally impossible. One of the few oil fields in this area is managed by James's company. This is the most frequent rig breakdown we've ever seen, and it's starting to cause issues. Replacing it is one possibility, but doing so would require buying a new one, which is highly expensive. James's face went white as he heard what I had said. He most likely recalled the cost of this setup. The cost of installing a new equipment is beyond our means. After all, it's $99 million, James replied, his voice shaking. I smiled a little as I nodded. Purchasing a new one is an impractical fix. I'll look at it immediately. It would be ideal if it could be fixed. Naturally, offshore oil drilling rigs are found at sea. I examined the control system because the operations are managed remotely from the ground. But as soon as I looked it over, I saw that this defect couldn't be resolved overnight. The rig itself wasn't working at all, and all the readings were incorrect. I had never seen anything like this before, and I was dumbfounded. Hey, did you make it here within 30 minutes? Tom was the one who talked to me. Get it fixed quickly. He laughed when he remarked, I'll get yelled at if the construction doesn't start, but I didn't find it amusing. Quick fixes aren't the goal. The question is whether there is any chance of fixing it. How long has this rig been in use? What? We haven't utilized it lately. Tom's tone seemed strange for some reason. He appeared to be concealing something. I believe we need to put together a repair crew and make long-term plans in order to fix this rig. I've never seen it in this condition, and it's totally non-functional. To be honest, I was equally perplexed. There is no precedent for this kind of problem, and there is no assurance that this unresponsive rig can be rectified. I'll most likely need to reopen this matter and speak with President Moore. What does long-term imply to you? Now fix it. Tom grabbed me by the collar and yelled, today's construction cannot begin if this isn't running. How he could act in this way was beyond me. Tom most likely utilized the equipment improperly, which is what caused it to malfunction. Shouldn't he be asking more regretful questions if that's the reason why today's construction is delayed? Taking hold of my collar and shouting is definitely not appropriate. I don't think this can be resolved in a few days, but I'll bring it back to the corporation and speak with the president. We may need to think about finding a substitute. What? Take care of it now. Do you know how much money we would lose if we have to postpone our construction? Your rig is to blame for its extreme weakness. You ought to cover the damages. Tom was making absurd requests. It is obvious that Tom is to blame for the delay and the losses that followed. It's ridiculous to blame us. I'll immediately return to the corporation and put together an investigative team. I must speak with the president. How could the elderly geezer know? He's famous, I've heard, but won't he be retiring soon? He is most likely senile and deaf. There's no point in asking that fossil. You immediately corrected. It was impossible for me to ignore what Tom had said. President Moore is a tremendous asset to our organization. None of us can yet surpass him, and he is respected by every employee. But I couldn't stand it when Tom's tone was obviously making fun of President Moore. Take it back. Excuse me. Tom narrowed his brows at my whispered voice. Repudiate your remarks on President Moore. An inept worker who gained access through contacts cannot offend him. He is a genius who worked hard and has talent to get to where he is now. He collaborates with gifted engineers from all around the world. For a time, Tom appeared stunned as I talked swiftly. Then a red flush came over his cheeks. He tightened his hold on my collar and gave me a hard shake. What the devil? Don't belittle me. Are you referring to someone as incompetent? What's wrong about using connections to gain access? Being wealthy is obviously preferable to being impoverished. Despite Tom's uncontrollable rage, I had no regrets about my words. If President Moore was insulted, nobody in our organization would remain silent. I'll pledge to fix the ray if you apologize right away. Months will undoubtedly pass, but it's better than nothing at all, isn't it? Why do you speak so lowly to me? You are the subcontractor, and we are the principal contractor. Simply follow instructions. Now fix it. If necessary, work through the night. I let out a little sigh as I realized Tom had no intention of saying sorry. There was no use in continuing the conversation with Tom. What you're saying makes sense to me. Please pardon me. As long as you get it, now go get some workers and fix it as fast as possible. Tom was yelling loudly, but I ignored him. I don't typically hate anyone, but I came to the realization that I really hate Tom. Either way, I had to talk to President Moore first. I returned to the company after thinking that. I returned to Tom's company 3 months following my disagreement with him. Tom smiled and came over as soon as he spotted me. After 3 months of restless nights, I appreciate you restoring it. I was very perplexed when Tom grinned and added, I'll wire you 5 cents for the repairs. What? Nothing has been fixed by me. What? Tom cocked his head, equally perplexed. What topic are you discussing? I take it you've been repairing it all night? Didn't you come to report that it's finally fixed? No, I really haven't done anything. Has Tom forgotten what we discussed 3 months ago? I stated that if he apologized, I would guarantee the repairs. I couldn't have made any repairs because he didn't apologize at the time. You couldn't have been idle for 3 months. It took far too long, but I'll let the boss know that it's fixed. I nearly ended up on the disciplinary committee. I was unable to comprehend Tom's words. I said, I didn't fix it, which implies that I didn't actually do anything, in response to his chuckle. Make sure you check that the repair fee is wired. Tom continued to smile as he left. Tom was wrong in everything he stated, but I didn't feel like correcting him. With a little sigh, I made my way to the president's office. I was at work the day after I visited Tom's company, and he had been phoning nonstop since the morning. I instructed my staff to inform him that I was unavailable because I had no reason to speak with him. However, the 10-minute calls were exhausting them. Tom is persistent, isn't he? One of the workers, Richard, who was tired of the incessant calls, inquired. Since Richard had been answering calls since the morning, Tom had screamed at him numerous times. Should I take over? I made an offer. No, everything is all right. Joseph, you have a lot to do and you're busy. Only the rig repairs are the subject of Tom's calls. Richard replied, You don't have to answer the calls merely to get reprimanded. It was really a relief that Richard was willing to take care of this. I had a lengthy international trip beginning tomorrow, so I was really busy today. By the end of the day, I had a ton of work to do in Japan. Tom continued to make calls into the afternoon. This indicated that he hadn't done any work or left the phone all morning. He was such a waste of money, I thought with a groan. Eventually, at about 3:00 p.m., the calls ceased. All of a sudden, the ringing that had been going on all day stopped. Richard whispered softly, "I feel uneasy about this." Richard said something that I didn't really listen to, but his suspicions were shortly confirmed. When Tom arrived to our workplace, he was enraged and had a crimson face. Tom raced into the office and came directly at me. Richard moved in between us right away. "Joseph is incredibly busy getting ready for a vacation abroad that begins tomorrow. You can speak with me if you want to chat about anything." He talked courteously, but he gave Tom a scowl. Tom yelled, "Get out of the way, you underling," and pushed Richard away. Something inside of me jerked when I saw Richard trip and fall. In addition to insulting President Mo, he now injured my esteemed subordinate. I could feel the wrath swelling within of me. Enough. How much longer are you going to behave this way? Stop working for our organization. Everyone in the workplace stared at me in disbelief as I yelled. I had never yelled so loudly since I started working for this company. I don't normally get upset, but this time I was enraged. "You've been bothering me with your calls all morning. To keep me safe, my subordinates have been answering the calls. But what do you want? Here, right now, I'll hear anything you have to say." I insisted. "I should be upset, not the other way around. You claim that you did nothing while making me wait 3 months for repairs. Are you serious?" Unfazed by my yelling, Tom roared back even louder. There was tension in the air as the other workers stared, holding their breath. "I promised to make the repair if you apologized, I told you that day." Tom never expressed regret for making fun of President Mo. I firmly stated. Our business relationship ended at that moment. "Are you still talking about that?" "Mo, how's your old man?" "You're worthless." "Come fix our drilling rig. Anyone here?" Tom let out a frustrated sigh and addressed the nearby staff, but nobody answered. "What's the matter?" "There must be someone available." "Okay, I'll cover the appropriate cost of the repairs." "Will you be pleased with that?" Tom stomped his foot in annoyance, but the staff looked at each other with concern. At last, Richard raised his voice. "Even if someone is available, that drilling rig can't be fixed without Joseph." "What?" Tom scowled at Richard's remark, obviously not anticipating that reaction. "What topic are you discussing? He cannot be the sole one capable of fixing it. Since maintenance is the department's specialty, anyone should be able to fix it." Tom was correct. All of the employees in this section are engineers, and they handle maintenance. We are able to mend oil drilling rigs on land, but fixing an offshore rig is extremely intricate and challenging. Since failures are uncommon, we regularly inspect to avoid problems. "What?" When Tom saw Richard's grave expression, he at last began to panic. "You'll need to ask Joseph if you truly want the rig fixed." Richard clarified, "Under his guidance, we can assist with the repairs, but we can't do it alone." The other staff members gave a nod of agreement. It was accurate what Richard was saying. Never before had an offshore drilling rig sustained such severe damage. Even I had to use trial and error to figure out how to fix it. The others couldn't possibly fix it. "Are you serious? Now just repair it. We can't begin our work without that rig. 3 months have already passed since we started. This is serious. As long as Joseph doesn't want to fix it, it's impossible," Richard remarked, grinning uncontrollably as Tom staggered toward tears. Richard was at his breaking point after spending the entire day answering Tom's calls. "You claim that you don't want to solve it, but why? You are responsible for maintenance. Take action." I sighed as Tom came closer and shouted at me. "I've given several explanations for why the repairs won't take place. What, then, led to this malfunction?" I inquired. "What?" My question caused Tom's eyes to widen. He was obviously suspicious as he peered about uneasily. "I'm not sure. It's your responsibility to figure it out. I visited your business 3 months ago after you mentioned that it had broken. You also claimed that it was broken the week prior, although it was a simple remedy. I conducted a comprehensive inspection to ensure that it wouldn't occur again. It shouldn't have broken when used normally. However, it broke once more a week later. That wasn't supposed to occur. I verified that there was no chance to use the gear that week. The breakdown of an unused rig seemed strange. For this reason, we mounted security cameras on the control machine and the rig itself during the most recent repair. Can you guess what we observed? As I spoke, I saw Tom's face dripping with perspiration. He was essentially making a silent confession. Tom shook. I don't know, and I couldn't help but chuckle. Not sure. Really? Your face was captured on camera. You were using a messy method and drilling for oil without authorization. It's no wonder it broke, I said. Tom made an attempt to protest, but eventually stopped when he saw it was useless. So when he's at a disadvantage, he's now silent? What a pitiful thing, I thought. I just carried out a comprehensive inspection after the president himself ordered me to look into the rig. In the end, it can be fixed, but our warranty does not cover it because Tom purposefully caused the fault. I came to your business yesterday for that reason. Not covered by the warranty. However, it is fixable, right? Please, make it right. Tom's eyes were annoyingly desperate. It would be like cleaning up after Tom's blunders to fix that rig. Why should I make an extra effort for someone who made fun of President Mo? Not covered indicates that the repairs will be your responsibility. The cost of repairs will be high because the apparatus is a patented gadget worth $99 million. Consider millions. I suggested to the president that you buy a new rig because there's no assurance it will be fully fixed. A brand new rig? We can't possibly afford $99 million. It's definitely not a cost you can arbitrarily choose to incur because something broke. Given that an ordinary employee's unlawful use caused the breakage, $99 million is a government-level budget. Purchasing a new one is not an option. Yes, that's why the president said the full amount will be charged to you. What? Tom took a moment to understand my meaning. It makes sense given that he recently discovered he owes $99 million. The $99 million figure caused your president to pause, but he added that since you are alone to blame, you will be held accountable for the entire sum. That isn't feasible. You might simply bring that elderly president here, fix it, or take some action. Since he is the president, he ought to be able to make things right. Unfortunately, I can't fix it either. President Moore, who had arrived at the office without being recognized, abruptly joined the discussion. He must have arrived to observe what was happening after hearing the disturbance. President Moore's sudden presence caused Tom's eyes to widen. You're Tom, the one who's causing all the problems then. I've heard a lot about you, President Moore said to Tom, his face composed and his thoughts completely hidden. The president is you. We have a malfunctioning drilling rig. Fix it now. Yes, I have heard that. Regretfully, neither can I change it. What? These remarks left Tom speechless. Things never occurred to him that not even President Moore could make things right. Why? Joseph planned and constructed that rig. On paper, it was a collaborative effort, and I offered my expertise, but the true credit goes to him. President Moore grinned. Incredulous, Tom blinked and mumbled, "You're kidding." It's serious. Joseph began his career designing equipment for a well-known corporation abroad. He made a fantastic talk at the world's premier physics conference, where we first met. I was shocked to learn that, as a recent graduate, he had applied to work for our organization. Unfortunately, because of our dismal sales at the time, we weren't hiring. It was a great loss to lose him. President Moore laughed. It wasn't even a loss. I got employed by a big American company after my interview was rejected. However, I would have immediately quit the American corporation if President Moore had contacted me. Without Joseph, we could not have developed our offshore oil drilling rig. Even I couldn't do it by myself because it's such a complicated and challenging piece of equipment. Once it breaks, it cannot be readily repaired. President Moore's voice grew sterner, obviously aimed at Tom. But without that rig, we can't work, and buying a new one is impossible. It is equally impossible to fix. Tomorrow, Joseph will depart for an extended journey abroad. He has back-to-back meetings with clients from abroad and an important conference. Our best engineer cannot be spared for your whims." "No way." Tom frantically searched for assistance, but none of our staff would help him. "Please leave right away if you're finished here. I'm busy, as I mentioned, and it's a waste of time to talk to you." After spitting out the words, I went back to work. Tom was similarly disregarded by the other staff members, who returned to their work. Tom cried and yelled for a while in an attempt to win sympathy, but when he realized no one would listen, he quietly left the group. Naturally, Tom was fired after that and received the whole $99 million bill as agreed. Since he gained access through connections, I assumed the sum could be lower, but I was shocked to see that the entire amount was billed. The proverb goes, "When money's gone, so are the friends." All of Tom's relatives shunned him as a result of this occurrence. He was invoiced $99 million for the new rig as compensation. That is, even filing for bankruptcy wouldn't pay off the debt. Tom's accounts were handled and used to make the payment, and all of his assets were frozen. Of course, he would never be able to pay that back in his lifetime. Tom's wife promptly filed for divorce because the compensation is inherited. By refusing to accept their inheritance, his children also severed ties. Tom has been observed collecting convenience store trash every day, literally left alone. Some employees have reported seeing him sleeping in parks, and he appears to be homeless. It's likely that Tom will spend the remainder of his life in this life. After a lengthy business trip abroad, I returned to Japan and resumed my hectic schedule. I was just formally nominated as the future president by President Moore. This had been discussed for some time, and I always assumed that after President Moore resigned, I would be the next to be mentioned. I was speaking with President Moore the other day. The thought of what may have transpired if I hadn't met you at that conference makes me shudder. Without you, my ambition of building the offshore drilling rig would never have come to pass. That is overstating things. You hire talented workers from all over the world. Another engineer like me might have been among them. I consider myself lucky to have met you before those talented employees did. That's not true, President Moore said gravely as he cut me off. Every new employee in the last few years has stated that they applied because they wanted to work for you. During his last interview, Richard even expressed his desire to collaborate with you. Really? I assumed they were referring to you. In answer, President Moore shook his head and laughed. I am no longer the face of this organization. It's you. Because they respect you. Engineers from around the globe join us. I've never met a better engineer than you. You are my pride. As he stated this, President Moore gave me a direct look. His comments weighed heavily on me. President Moore thinks highly of me, and I want to stay that way. I want to be the best engineer, unrivaled, in order to do that. That's when I discovered my life's purpose.